Chrissy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me? Can
Ash,
you hear
can
me?
you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a Little Paranormal podcast. Tonight it's going to be me, Chrissy, and Ash interviewing Amy from Netflix's 28 Days Haunted. I just want to remind you all that you can look at all of our socials at www.paranormalwiththebluegrass.com. But we will go ahead and bring Amy on to answer some questions.
Hi, Amy.
Hello.
So
How
good to
is
see
everybody?
Good to
So
see you.
good. How are you?
I'm great.
We're so glad to talk to you again. Oh,
It,
Uh-oh.
we had a very nice conversation the last time, so we'll continue that.
yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
We've been so excited.
We have about the same questions, but we just want to go over them again so that other people can kind of hear the answers and maybe it'll be helpful for them in the future.
hmm
So I am going to go ahead and start off with, let's see, how did you get into the paranormal?
Mm, well, that that started probably. Well, I've been seeing spirits since I was about 4 or 5. So, but of course, when you're young, you don't understand those things. You just think you're you're just, well, at first you think people are really there, and then you ask other people and you're like, oh my gosh, you see that person over there, and they're looking at you like you got 3 eyes, and you're like, no. So, and then it wasn't until about my mid 20s, I started wondering. The majority of my childhood I slept in my brother's room because I was always so scared, because I was always like hearing things and seeing things in my room. So, about my mid 20s, I kind of got a curiosity of like why I was so afraid when I was younger. So I started doing like a little bit of research and finding out that there were other people out there. I started reading books and um, just finding out that there was a lot of people out there that were having the same experiences that I did. And then it ended up being a cousin of mine. She was on a paranormal team, and this is when I lived in Pennsylvania. So it was Steeltown Paranormal, and I ended up being the sensitive for that team, and that's just how I got into it.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, that's cool.
So I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
You need to turn up your volume just a tad, Ash.
Okay. Can you hear me?
It's still a little hairy.
Okay. You guys just do it.
Hold on, let me see if I can edit your mic volume.
My headphones is not working for some reason. I apologize.
Oh, no, you're fine. Just take your headphones out if you need to. I don't think it's going to echo that much, honestly. I know it said that, but I think you're going to be fine.
Okay, they are out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just go ahead and I'll see what I can figure out.
Okay. If you want to put it in the private chat, then I will, if it's one of the ones that's on our list.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Ash's question, what you kind of touched on a little bit was, what was your first paranormal experience? And you already said how old you were. And, well, what was the one that really impacted you the most that you can remember?
That would be the first apparition I've ever seen. So, I mean, I would see partials when I was probably about. I used to have this weird thing when I was a kid. I used to always want to be like prepared, because I always felt like I was going to see something, or something was going to pop up, or something was going to happen. So I would have these drills that I would do. And I grew up on a farm. So we used to have this big farmhouse, and the railing, I used to do gymnastics. So I used to sit there and play around, do this, and then I would, for some reason, I would always just stop and hurry up and see how fast I could like go into my door. And I don't know why I did this. And then one day, it was the most bizarre thing, because when I see spirit in the physical, I see them like in a cream colored. So I was sitting there playing around the one day, and then I just happened to like look over, and there was this cream colored, like brown tannish dog that was like charging towards me. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I prepared myself for this, and I was just like, okay. And I was like, in a hurry, but I got into my house, and then I'm like standing out there, like, nose up to the glass, looking and trying to see like where this dog went. And I mean, I searched all around my house and I did not find it. I mean, because I lived out, like, there were fields. I mean, fields. So I'm like, I know no matter in what direction anything goes, I'm going to be able to see it. So I could not find this dog. And then it dawned on me later on when I was older. I was like, oh my gosh, that was your first apparition that you saw. That was an animal. But then there's also when you see the human apparitions of like when it's an apparition, because when you're smaller, you can't discern whether or not like that's a real person or not. You see either shadow figures, you see like they would look as real as you or I. So, and then sometimes they'd be like a little bit see through, but the one that really stood out to me was at my cousin's house, and she'd invited me over for dinner. And my family owned like a ton of property, so we all kind of lived on along a strip along this country road. So we went over there for dinner, and she had been telling me about there was something in the house, and this is the one I'm on the paranormal team with. So she was telling me, she's like, I really feel like something's in the house, and these houses are like old. We're talking like early 1900s, maybe possibly a little bit towards the 1800s. And she's like, I really feel like there's something in there. And she would have gifts too. She could kind of see things, but she would always kind of doubt herself. So she would ask me about this. She's like, can you pick up on anything? And we were literally sitting down in her living room, and she was sitting beside me. And, we were kind of sitting like up against the wall, and we were just talking to each other. Well, her husband, my cousin, he had no shirt on. He was getting ready for bed. And he was like, he said his good nights. He's like, hey, I'll talk to you guys later. So we're sitting there and we're talking, and she's like, I feel him. Can you feel it? And she didn't describe to me like what he looked like or anything like that. So I just said, does he look like he has like a shaved head? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, does he wear overalls? I said, like either jean or corduroy. She's like, yes. So we're just casually talking. And then all of a sudden I turn around and I look, and in the archway of her kitchen, I watched a man walk past. And I was like, "Wait, why is my cousin," we called him Opie. I'm like, "Why is Opie in the kitchen? I thought he was upstairs." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I just saw him in the kitchen." And she's like,
I think Amy's frozen.
I know. I think she froze up a little bit, which sucks because we were at a really good part.
Yeah,
"Did I
there
get
you
cut
are.
out?"
You
Yeah,
did just a
I don't
little.
think Opie wanted us to talk about that.
That's true. Probably not.
So So it was funny. Well, and I'm like looking at her, and our eyes are just getting bigger and bigger. She's like, Amy, listen, he's upstairs. And I could hear him moving around in the bathroom. And I turned around, I'm like, listen, I'm like, I swear to God, what I just saw, there was a man, he did not have a shirt on. I said, but he did look like he had bibs on. And we both just stopped, and her eyes just start welling up. And she's like, he made an appearance, like you saw him, you physically saw him. So we're like all excited, we're like we're like, let's go over there, and I'm like, let's see if we can communicate with them. Well, he told me his name was Charlie. His name was Chuck, but in for some reason in spirit they always go by their formal names. So he was saying that his name was Charlie or Charles. So, and I'm like, well, I asked him, I'm like, well, what are you doing here? And I heard I'm going to the pig pen. And I'm like, well, what kind of animals do you have? And he said, pigs and chickens. So we're like ecstatic. We're like, oh my God, I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, I've never seen it like that, like when I was older, I've never seen it that clear, right? So before, when I was younger, like it would, you would see things like it's hard to explain because like I would see shadows of people, but then sometimes they would look real, right? But this was like it looked like a real man walking across the kitchen, except for the fact that he didn't have a torso. It was like
Oh,
he
wow.
had no legs. He just kind of floated across, right?
Oh,
So the best part about this is that my grandfather, he's, from a different era, so they really didn't, believe in that stuff. And he was in the hospital at the time, and I walked up to him and I'm like, I have something I need to ask you. And I had this little smirk on my face, and he was like, what? And I was like, well, I kind of met this guy, and I'm like in the old farmhouse, and I was like, and I explained on what he looked like with the overalls, no shirt, shaved head. And I'm like, was there ever anybody there? He goes, that's Chuck. And I'm like, and he said, that's Chuck Bice's house. And I'm like, well, Pap, I saw him. And he's like, Amy, he's been dead for decades. And I'm like, I understand that. And he goes, I was a little boy who used to help him on the farm. And my grandfather was in his 80s, mind you. So he was like, he was looking at me, shaking my head, or shaking his head, like, there's no way you would know about that. There's no way. Because he never told me a lot about like when he was a child and what he did and whatnot. So he said that Chuck was around back in the 1920s, about 21 to 23 is where he kind of got the year. But he said, yeah, I was a little boy. And I said, well, he told me that he was going to feed the hogs and that there were chickens, there was pigs and chickens. He's like, yeah, that's all my father had on the farm. And I was just like, and you're going to, like, how do you,
that's
it
such
was
a
fun. It
cute
was a good time.
story. That's so
Yeah.
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah.
And it just like from there, it was just like everything just kind of opened up, and that was like the initial. But when you have somebody there with you that can sense and feel with you, because it's almost like when you're together who have those capabilities, it almost enhances your abilities, so it's really exciting to see like the things that you can do. So yeah, that was, we would kind of play around with that. And when we would go on investigations, her and I, she would know a lot about, because they had already been to a lot of the locations, because I kind of came in later. So they already been to a lot of locations, and they kind of took me out to test me, to see if like I would be able to pick up on things that they knew the history of. So we went to a couple cemeteries and whatnot, and I brought up multiple things. I went to the two team leaders. I went to their house to meet them, and it was that was pretty fun because I started picking up on their dog who was like throwing up and dying in the spot I was sitting in apparently. So it was just really weird. It's weird, like the things that you pick up when you pick them up, and like sometimes you can't, and then sometimes you can, but like when you're around other people, I enhances it.
I definitely could sense that with our group. We're the same way. When we have
Mm-hmm.
all of us together, it's like a powerhouse,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion.
Yeah. I think we draw things in to
Who's
us.
wait, didn't Chrissy, didn't you, was it you that you said you were the magnet?
I have been in my personal life, yes.
Yes. Okay.
But uh, I think all of our sensitives really,
Had their
we all,
own,
yeah,
yes, yes,
yeah, reasons for magnetism, I guess you'd say.
right.
Yeah, yeah. So
I was the magnet for our team, and there was a couple, because when you get EVPs, like when you're investigating, it's exciting. It's exciting when you get
yeah.
anything because you're just out. Normally, I would just go, my teammates would use, they would use like the whatever gadgets they had, and I would always do the walk-ins first. And then I would sit there and I would always write everything down as I go because obviously I'm not going to remember everything.
Mhm.
So, and there was one particular time we were investigating, it was oh my gosh, what kind of place was it? It was like an antique place. So when we were in there, I'm sorry, it was a historical property. And there was a little girl in there, and she literally, the EVPs were responding. We were playing hide and go seek, and we were trying to get her to come closer to, like, we had the flare guns and we were trying to get that. They were trying to get this little girl on camera, but we got like this EVP um, that when I was saying, well, you're not in there, because she knew I was looking for her. And she was like, and then all of a sudden you get an EVP that says, you're hot, like as in hot and cold. So it was
Oh,
pretty
that's
cool.
cute. Yeah, that's
So
really cute.
I think it's
I
always
get all
exciting.
excited when I talk. I could talk for hours about this stuff.
Oh yeah, me
We
too.
the same. We're the same.
Hmm.
Um, I get a every time that I've been on the podcast or we've spoken with the Scarefest crew, I get a headache, and I have that feeling now. It's just like
Mm,
I it's odd that we're across, we're all in different places, and I can still feel it, but it's like this headache is just like, yeah. But
hmm.
that's I feel like that's that kind of the amplification thing, like we talked about before.
Hmm.
So when we were at Scarefest, you talked with Beth and I about how you like to call yourself a sensitive and not a medium. Can you explain to the listeners why? Why do you have that differentiation? What is the reason for that?
Well, it's psychic. I don't like to be called psychic
Oh,
because
okay,
I feel
gotcha.
like it was like I can do mediumship and I can do sensitive, because when I use the word sensitive, when you look at society and you think people, a lot of people will say psychic medium, which is, there are, but there's different aspects to being a psychic. Psychics are more like seeing into the future, and, they have different abilities than mediumship, but in a way they kind of do come together. But it's because of how much that word has been just drug through the mud by people who go out and, like, the charlatans, or people who want to go out and try to get famous or are money hungry. I feel like they've kind of ruined it. And so when I say sensitive, that's kind of more of a broader term that doesn't really give me a label, that gives me like, I can do quite a bit of things, but I just don't want to put a label on it. But in some cases I have to, because people who aren't as familiar with the paranormal, like if you hear psychic medium, they're like, oh, okay, they kind of get it. But then sensitive sometimes is used for me, and the way I view it is, some people may think, oh, well, you're just sensitive to your surroundings, or you're just sensitive to at locations. And I'm like, it could be that, but it's actually a lot more. So I don't like the label, and I feel like people have really, yeah.
Completely understood. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for that answer.
Yep.
So, what do your friends and family think about you being sensitive and working with the paranormal? Are they pretty supportive?
Not at first. Because you figure,
Yeah.
you know this person their whole life. They've always been they've been on the weird, funny side. But they move away, and then they're like, all of a sudden they're like, hey, I've unlocked all these things that I'm able to do now, because I finally understand what all this stuff is. Like, before I didn't know, and I would just kind of be curious about it or ask questions, or people would just kind of side-eye me like, what are you talking about, because nobody really understood. I feel like um it was more, I think they were afraid of it. What people are taught in the Bible, they're like, "Oh, that stuff is bad." And I'm like, "Well, I'm like, it can't be bad." I'm like, if you work under the name of the Lord and you call upon angels for help, and you consider what you're doing a service to others, because you're helping them with their grieving process, and that's a service of God. So I don't feel like that's something that could be viewed upon as like bad. And there were a couple people that I did have to explain that to. And there was a verse that I actually, I just kind of, I asked, I was doing a guided meditation at one point in time, and I've never read the Bible. I'm not going to lie, never read. because whatever my belief is, like, I know that there is a higher power. I don't need the Bible to tell me that. I know that there is.
Mhm.
So it's almost like, but I reference it because sometimes like brings me comfort to do that. So I was doing a guided meditation one night, and I said, I'm going to open up a random page while my eyes are closed, and I'm just going to pick a random verse. And that's what it's going to be, because I had questions. I said, because one of my clients at the time was very religious, and she was like, I really want to do this with you. She's like, but I'm kind of afraid. I don't want to go against anything, and I don't want to, I don't want to get in trouble, and in the eyes of the Lord. So I was like, okay. So I was asking for guidance, and I called upon angels and the higher celestial beings to help me. And I basically opened up, and I believe it was either John 14:12 or 13:12, because it was a long time ago, and it talked about us being able to do what Jesus does because he goes to the Father. So I explained this to my client at the time, and I was like, well, I explained to her what I did, and I showed her what I pointed to, and I said, do you find a coincidence that that references what we were talking about? I said, because I don't. I'm like, I feel like I was guided to show you that. So, but my family, like, at first they weren't. To get back on, I have ADHD, so sorry. So if I get all over the place, don't mind me.
We all do.
We
We all
all do.
do.
So, but yeah, my family,
Welcome.
they were really afraid. There were some incidences that had occurred like back in the like early years of it, where they were more afraid of it because I was talking about things. It wasn't basically until I think about 2013 is when they actually started taking me serious and was like, whoa, like you're the wow. Okay, yeah, we're not going to question you anymore. And that was when my aunt passed away, because I gave them the date, the time, and the day she was going to die, because that's what my grandmothers came to tell me. And she died that day. It was like 3 days after Thanksgiving. I think it was 3 or 4 days after. And I told them, this is the last time you're going to talk to her. So make sure. And they were all looking at me like, I can't even believe you're even saying that. And she had had lung cancer for like 4 years. And she's the only person I know that could went in and out of hospice. So, and she came out, and then it was like weeks later, and she was just telling me about all this stuff about her growing up. And then all of a sudden, boom, within 3 days, she went downhill and she was gone. So I told her, I said, December 2nd at 12:22 is when she's going to die. And she died on December 2nd. The death certificate said 114, but I know she transitioned at 12:22.
I just got chills all over my
Hmm.
body
Yeah.
just hearing that. Oh my gosh, I'm
So,
covered in chills right now.
and the
That's
funny
crazy.
part was, an hour after she passed away, I'm sitting at work, and I used to work at a front desk for this trucking company. And I'm literally sitting there, and I hear her. The first thing I hear is, "Why are you putting makeup on at your work?" And I'm like,
First of
"What?"
all, who, where?
Oh, she was like that. And I was like, "Who is this?" And then she's like, really?" And she's like, "It's your Aunt Lois." I'm like, listen. I'm like, listen, we just didn't you just like do something here? And she's like, do you want me to tell you about it? Because she questioned me for years. How do you know this? How do you know this? And the best part, oh, I forgot to, best part about that is her caretaker had the same name as her daughter. So I would tell my aunt, like, you will know it's your time. Because she used to say, I'm supposed to die first. I was supposed to go before my sister and my mother. They both went before me. I'm the oldest. I'm supposed to, like kind of like one of those things. And she's like, how do you know? How do you know? I said, well, you'll know when you see your sister and your mother, you will know it is your time to go. And right before she went like completely, she was like unconscious at like towards the end. Right before she did that, she told her caretaker, my mother and my sister are here. And she went, and the caretaker knew the story, and she's like, Lois, what did they say? And she's like, my sister said we're going back to school, and that was the last thing she said. And
Oh,
so that was like, see, those things are like validating. Those are when you get that validating stuff, it's so
Yeah.
there's nothing that feels as good. Like there's no amount of like money. It doesn't matter like what it is. That type of stuff is like priceless to me. And it's
right.
just like, wow. And then it makes you start thinking about your own life, your own things. And you're like, man, there's so much more to this. There's just like, we're just a speck on such a huge spectrum that it's just, wow. And it's so eye opening, but it's also, it's like, I wish I could do it all the time.
Yeah.
Like I'd
Yeah.
be like, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I I dream, and I don't mean to get off on myself, after you.
No, go for it.
But my grandfather shot himself when I was a small child. I was 10, 12, 11, something right around there. And all of these details were kept from me,
Hmm.
of course, because, it, rocked my mother's world. She didn't
Yeah.
want it to trickle down to me. Um, Maybe 5 years ago, I had a dream, and it was his father. His father was standing up. He was laying down in bed, and he told me the whole um, all of the things that happened that day. He had gone and done this, and he had gotten a haircut, and he had filled the tank up with gas, and he went back and forth, and I don't want to do this. I do want to do this. I don't want to, and he
Right.
was putting himself in the kitchen and then in the bedroom and then the kitchen, and I could see this, and he was laying down in the bed, which signified to me that he was ill. It was a mental illness. It wasn't a sickness, um, and that he was with his father. And I told my mom all of this, and she's like, "Okay, I believe it.
Yep.
Things that you shouldn't know.
Right.
There you have it."
Hmm.
So that's cool. That it's neat to have that connection,
Hmm.
like you said.
So, are you the only one in your family that has this gift? Because go
Actually,
ahead,
the
Dad.
funny part is my uncle, my dad's brother, I found out probably in the like when I started like doing more like out in the public, that's when I found out that my uncle actually like does card readings with angel cards. So him and I, because obviously when I was younger, he was like crazy party animal guy, and but when I got older, he was like, wait, he goes, so this is like genetic? And I'm like, yeah, I think it is because my kids have it. So
Really?
yeah, like my daughter can see things. My son senses things. So, which is crazy because they're like two opposites, but at the same time, like they have their own way of like they don't understand it, like most of us don't at that age. But they'll like if they have a question, but they can sense things that are going like around any location, or like if they're whether they're here or with their dad, whoever, like they usually tell me sleeping here is creepy because they always hear things at night. I'm like,
Yeah.
don't worry, they won't bother you, they're just
Yeah.
passerbys.
Hmm. Yep.
I know
Same
my
at my.
4-year-old. Can you hear me?
I'm
Mhm.
I'm trying.
Okay. My 4-year-old, he can be outside in the car and he'll come in and I'll be like in the bathroom and he'll come in and just grab me and I was almost in like a panic attack and he had no idea. He didn't say. All I seen was him coming running up behind me and just holding me, telling me, "Mom, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay."
Oh.
And he was
Oh,
outside, 4 years old.
Oh.
Yeah. But I mean, I have gifts myself. We all do in the group.
Right.
Yeah, so I think he's empath too.
Right. And you
yeah.
always tell when they're younger. My daughter was the same. My roommate at the one time, his wife had passed away, and she had actually passed away in the home. And when my daughter had come over, and when I moved in with him, um, the first thing she said when literally within 5 seconds of walking through the door, she said, "Mommy, somebody died here. I'm scared." And I was just like, well, honey, I'm like, somebody did die here, but you don't need to be scared. And she's like, and she, I think she was like 5 or 6, so she didn't like understand the feelings that she was having. And she would tell me about things that she would see, like when she'd be looking out the windows, like when we'd be going down the car. She's like, because I'm like, when if you see something, you tell mommy, and I'm like, and mommy will help you work. I'll work, we'll work through it. And we were driving down the road one day, and she's like, mommy, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it. And I'm like, well, tell me what you. So I would have her describe in the best of her ability, like what she was seeing. And some of it was scary. I mean, just it was after I came home from filming the show. She had told me, actually my whole family, like my husband, everybody was seeing things like in their peripherals. That was definitely interesting. And my daughter screamed like at the top of her lungs. And she's like, Mom, there was a hand that literally came out from like the bathroom. And I was just like, what if some things followed me home? Maybe. Yeah. Don't mind them either. They're okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, how do you like do exercises to hone your abilities? Do you, try to do like an upkeep? How do you hone your abilities? I mean, just simple as that.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I've been slacking lately. Because I'm in school, so I'm trying
Hmm.
to get my RN, and I'm trying to like do that. And then it's like you're doing your stuff in your physical world, but then you can't forget that you have everything, you know, in the astral world that you have to also keep balanced. So normally what I do is meditation, even through my own meditations, because I've had the meditations, because we all have guides. And when I took like long time ago, I took a channeling class because I wanted to see if it would really work. And I scared some people after that class because they were like, I've never told anybody this. Like, how do you know this? It was pretty crazy. It was crazy, but it was like, I'm like, I want more. I want more. I want to keep doing more. There was a channeling class, and I will never forget that this woman, she would just be talking, to you or I, and she was telling me, like, even back then, meditation is the key. If you can quiet your mind enough and to where you can sit and open yourself up, always make sure grounding is very important. Always make sure that you have, always say like a mantra or a prayer before and after. But those are like things, and I would even try to come up with my own um, as I'm doing, and I do a lot of visualizations. So, like, if I'm gonna, like, before I would do readings before, so before I would do that, I would at least take 30 minutes prior to that, and I would have to do like visualizations of it's like a huge column of like golden light that comes down, like, and from the sky, and like hovers me, and I say, like, may the light of God surround me, may the love of God enfold me, may the power of God protect me. I do stuff like that. Um, I'm constantly it never stops. Like it never like you don't really get like a resting period because unless you just try to like not pay attention to it. Like I'm always hearing things. The weird thing is one thing I developed was that I'm able to hear words, um, but there's no tone to it. And it's a very slow, like when I hear the words, it would be like someone talking like this, but there's no actual vocal to it. So it would be like whispering, but it would be like words talking through. It's so hard to explain. I've yet, I've been trying to find people like you'll hear like you'll get imprints of like you'll hear like a voice or you'll hear like whether it's male or female, but in this case, like I can't tell because there's no tones to it. So, but with that, you know, I love just going out every day. Like when I meet people, I always get vibes with them. I guess. Is that answering your question? Like, how do you
Yes,
hone it? Because you're
absolutely. It's a
kind of like,
practice every day.
yeah,
Yeah.
because you're kind of doing it. Like I'm always told there are messages everywhere you go. Like
Hmm.
there are actually people who are waiting for messages. I've had people just drop in to where like the weird thing is that my mom had married her husband, right? So, but I'd never really met her husband's family. So, short story, I went and met her husband's family. This was years ago, and I went to Pennsylvania, and I was like, sitting there meeting everybody. Da, da, da. Well, then afterwards, I came home, and I can see ethereal outlines sometimes, especially in front of windows and mirrors. So I literally was sitting there and I kept seeing something going side to side. And I'm like, who is it? Because I get mad. I have boundaries. You're not allowed just to walk into my home. You're not allowed to just come in. You're not allowed to do anything unannounced. Like, I have to know who it is, why you're there, and if you're even allowed in, basically. So I saw this back and forth. And then I heard, you have no idea how much this means. I really need to talk to you. In this voice that there's no tone, so I'm like trying to understand like what's being said. You don't understand, you're so amazing, blah blah blah, I need to talk to you. And I was like, who in the world, why are you here? And I had a sense that it wasn't anything bad. It was almost like a distant knowing. So I was like, who are you? And he said, my name is Jimmy. Or I'm sorry, what does it say? Name was, I think his name was James, but he said he went by Jimmy. And he said, I'm Jimmy's uncle. I forget his name. Sorry. And so I'm like, okay, why are you here? He's like, I just died like 3 or 4 months ago. So I need you to tell Jimmy I'm okay. And I'm like, you followed me home for this? Like trying to make a joke.
Yeah.
Like, I can just text the guy, like whatever. So, well, then I thought he left. Well, he like literally like formed right in front of me. And I had never seen anything like this in my life. And I was sitting there watching Teresa Capito, Long Island Medium of all things. And I thought he had left. And I'm texting my mom, like, Mom, I need you to, like, obviously I don't know her husband's family yet. So I'm like sitting there, I'm like, uh, I I had a spirit come. He told me all this information. He told me his name, who he was, da 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 da, what his relation was. This is 1 o'clock in the morning, mind you. So of course she didn't answer me right away. But I went out into the kitchen and I was sitting there and I heard rustling around and I looked over and then all of a sudden I see this black thing shoot across my kitchen. But when I saw it, it was like almost as if it was like slow motion in a way, but it was really fast. And he was like, there was black, turquoise, and cream color. It was like the weirdest thing. But anyways, long story short, my mom validated, yes, his uncle did die. Yes, he just died 3, 4 months ago. And yes, that was his uncle.
Wow. Wow.
But he scared the crap out of me. But I mean, you do like you have to have boundaries. Like I have like this imaginary force field around my home, like and nothing can come in without being announced. So and like I use my guides. My guides will your guides are always there to help you. They are dying to help you. They want to help you. Angels show things in the most miraculous ways. If like I had a coworker who really didn't believe in the paranormal, and I explained to her, she's like, well, the way you're sounding like it, she goes, it sounds like they're just coming right on your doorstep and, they're just gonna, hey, show right up. I'm like, well, if you ask them nicely, I'm like, sometimes they do. And so she was like, well, how do I do this? I said, well, you're gonna go. I'm like, you're gonna write, like, I always write things down 15 times. If I really want something to happen, I'm like, I try to manifest it. So I go and I used to have journals everywhere because I used to write everything. But anyways, sorry, get off topic. Anyways, but I had it, long story short, she ended up bawling her eyes out because she ended up getting the signs and she ended up finding a feather, a white feather, mind you. And something happened. Somebody miraculously came out of the blue and handed her like $5,000. I said, I don't know what you asked for, but I hope you realize that was a gift. She was like, I believe. I believe.
Wow.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
was insane.
That's
And
amazing.
I've always felt bad. I'm like, I've never asked for money. And I'm like, but if that's something that you really, she had like 5 kids and she was a single mom, so she probably needed it. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
it was a
yeah,
blessing of mass proportion.
100.
Yeah.
Yes. On a celestial level, yes.
So on the
So,
same topic of like your abilities and stuff, and I know like you probably deal with it 24/7, but how do you relax from stuff like that and like this world and the spiritual world and stuff like that? Is there a way that you kind of try to shut it off?
um, yes, I have, like I said, I do a lot of visualization. So, because if you think about it, when you visualize something, those are thoughts. Thoughts are energy. So that's everything is energy no matter what. So even when you're visualizing it, it's almost like you're creating it. So that is just like my boundary. So I have a latch door that I have a lock on. And when that latch door is closed, that means I'm closed. I'm not reading, I'm not doing anything. Um, and then, but sometimes you get those ones where they're just like, hey, hey. And so, but I'm partially deaf too. I was born that way. So, and the crazy thing is sometimes I'll feel vibrations in my ear with nobody standing there. It's coming from somewhere, but I hear the words that are coming through to it. And then sometimes they'll use that and say, I understand that you're kind of like closed right now, but I really need your help with something, or like, so and so, like your family members are here, or they'll interrupt me at some point. But yeah, it's hard
That's
to
awesome.
do because you have to ignore it, but you have to be the one in control of it, or else you'll drive yourself crazy.
Everybody, just be calm.
So can you tell if like someone is psychic or sensitive? And if you can, do you ever tell them?
You can. I was talking to Beth and Chrissy about this. So yes, you can, because you can feel, because it's almost like a weird. It's like a sisterhood, right? Or brotherhood, whoever is there, and you get a very keen sense that that person is very easy to talk to because your energies are combining, right? So you can definitely feel when somebody is and when somebody isn't. I think I was telling you guys at Scarefest, I was saying that there was a pretty high profile person who, a friend of mine, now this is somebody who we've had the same experiences. We picked up on the same entities and the same like scenario, which does not happen very often. We were at a big event and we actually were around somebody who was saying that they were, and we're like, there's one of two things: either they've closed themselves off completely, like put a barrier up, or they're full of it, because I am not feeling it at all.
Right.
But yes, you can always feel when that person is has some type of those energetic abilities, because something with you is meshing with them, or you'll feel your abilities enhance and you'll start picking up on things that sometimes you wouldn't normally do on your own.
That's awesome. Do you journal? Do you write down any of your experiences? Like what, how do you document these things
I
or
used to
choose
be
what to document?
I was gonna say I used to be a nut, and I used to write everything down. Like I said, I've had stacks of journals. The bigger events that were either whether some of, I mean, I've had maybe 3 encounters with like nasty stuff, like personally, but going to a location, that's something different. But yeah, I mean, at first it was everything, anything that somebody would question to be coincidence, or somebody would be like, no way, that did not happen. Like, it was everything. And then it turned into, kind of started spiritually growing, I would say. So then I started to be able to discern ones that I knew would probably happen again, so I knew I wouldn't have to document those. But when I would go on investigations, when things would physically be moving, or if there were things, readings that I'm supposed to remember, or if there were certain incidences, I don't know. I guess I don't know if you call it laziness, or I just decided that either I knew it was probably gonna happen again, or yeah, I guess laziness. We'll call it laziness.
You can't write everything down.
You can't, no.
Yeah.
I have tons of those leatherback journals. I would love to go back through and read some of them. But I also did my mantras in them too, about when I was trying to manifest things.
Yep. And that's the writing 15 times, and then
Yeah.
you say a prayer before,
Hmm.
and a saying afterward, or a prayer afterward. What was that?
I would always be something like if I was actually doing visualizations and I was actually going into like the ethers, it would
Hmm.
be the may the light of God surround me, and may the love of God enfold me, and may the power of God protect me. So, and then any type of reading that I would do, that was always my before. All my after is, I think it was like in the name of Jesus Christ. Oh my gosh. Um, like it would be between human spirits and for it was, oh my gosh. See, when you're put on the spot, like you can say it any other
I'm
time.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're okay. But it's like, but there's always
Notes.
particular ones that I use a before and after. But yeah. In
That's
the light
awesome.
of Jesus Christ, I command all human spirits to be bound to the confines in which you came from. I command all inhuman spirits to go where Jesus Christ tells you to go, for it is He who commands you. That's always my ending one.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We need
So,
to we need to do that with our group.
Yeah.
yeah, we do actually. That's a really key thing that we really should start implementing.
Mhm.
Um, have you ever thought about creating something educational for people or a book or anything?
I've actually wanted to. Tracy Ray and I talked years ago about traveling around and helping people who are like on the fence a little bit, like I think I have something, or like something happened, because most people get into the paranormal because of the experiences that they had.
Yes.
They have
Yes.
had some kind of earth-shattering experience
Hmm.
that has blown their mind. It has changed their paradigm to the point where they're like, say no more. Like, I will never question a thing again. Um,
We get that a lot.
yeah. And so we wanted to, instead of going around doing readings for people, we want to teach people how to do readings, what to look for, how to discern, how to use your abilities, because we all have the ability to do it. It's just some people were more, uh, I guess, born, like, have the innate ingrained in them, so and they embrace it more. So it comes natural. Some people that question themselves, it comes a little bit harder. But everybody questions themselves at the beginning. Everybody does. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, seriously, I went to a shrink to make sure that and got my head checked and make sure I was okay. Like, for real.
Or yeah. Yeah.
I
Why am I
wanted to
hearing
make
these
sure.
things? Yeah.
Yeah. But that was like one of the ideas, because I read books. I love James Van Prague. I love oh my gosh, John. I was just actually reading his Facebook page. Holland. And those people have inspired me. They've written those books, teach, because they do the readings, but they also teach at the same time. So that was kind of like what I was thinking. But I've never heard of anybody like, I know, let me take that back, because they do try to teach you how to use your abilities. Each individual journey, so it's hard. You can try to do it as a general, but everybody has their own personal learning experiences, and there are different levels to which, like, that they're going to progress to, because sometimes I've heard people say that their abilities have plateaued, like they don't feel like they can get any further. And I kind of laugh and I'm like, well, no, really, you can go a lot further, but it's just whether or not you choose to. Everything is based off your intentions. From what Spirit has told me, like even when we transition, everybody says, we go before the pearly gates, and you do have a life review. And that life review is consistent of your deeds to others, how you treat others, and how you treat yourself. So it's crazy because that's why so many people, when they cross over, they have such an understanding because they have felt your feelings. It's not just like you have a picture up and you're going to see what's going to be. You actually go through the motions of feeling what that other person felt. And it's crazy. Like they've told me like a lot of things. Like I've even heard where spirit, like it's like an ethereal world, like you're in a different dimension, and it's almost like you can, there's like colorful lights like all over the place, but yet you're a ball, like what we would see would be a ball of light, but what they see is something completely different. um when some spirits see us, they don't see us as human form, they see our aura, and that's how they see us. They don't actually see us as people, because I've actually wondered about like privacy times, because I'm like, listen, I don't want people coming in on me, on
Mhm.
my private moments. I'm like, I don't want no peeping toms. And they're like, don't, like, we don't see it like that. That's not like, my guide has told me, like, I met my guide once, and that was during initiation through that channeling class that I did. He had a very long beard, and he was white, and he had a big white robe, like big white robe. And like we all had like this initiation meditation, to where if you were be able to reach the depths, because they kind of showed you how to do that type of meditation to get that deep into it. So, and it's whether, because you're going to be climbing stairs, but you have to see yourself climbing these stairs. It's crazy. Like I've never experienced anything like that. That was insane. But the crazy part is I actually did a meditation years later, because I said I want to do a meditation where you guide my hand, because I was working on automatic writing at the time. And I wanted my guides, just my guides, to hone in with me. And I used to have a picture of it, but I drew on two different pieces of paper. If you were to hold up the one paper, it looked like like a circle figure, like a ball with a I guess like a long oval type body, but it looked like that there were wings behind it. But when you turn, and then on the second page, I just was doing this. That's the whole thing I was doing. And it took me 2 weeks to figure this out. But when you put them together and then you turned it this way, it was the picture of my master guide. And I did it
Wow.
unknowingly.
Oh,
I swear to God, I will look for this picture, because I can attest that that is what really happened.
Wow.
I have pictures of, I don't know if you guys can see this. Earlier when I was talking about calling upon the angels, well, you guys have access to my Facebook page, right?
yes.
Yes.
Yes. I don't know if the pictures are on there for. Anyways, there's a picture of frozen angel wings on my window. You can see in the picture that all the ice is melted in like the yard, but there's a perfectly iced sculptured, so to speak, on my window of angel wings. Those are the types of
Wow.
things, like when you ask for signs, they will give you signs. No problem. So
I'm
yeah.
going to
That's
do that.
amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
All kinds of good information. You've
Yeah.
you've
Mhm.
you've rejuvenated our excitement for doing things,
Mhm.
and I'm so thankful that you were here with us to talk today. And everybody wants to hear about 28 Days Haunted. Of course, we've saved that for near the end. I know our time is coming. How did you feel when they contacted you about that? Were you excited? Were you nervous? How, tell us.
Uh my heart kind of sunk, cuz I was
Yeah.
like, me?
Me?
I'm like, me?
I knew that was
Why
coming.
me?
Wow.
Well, I did not know actually until we did the panel at Scarefest how much Dave Schrader was behind the scenes of a lot of that. And that man is a blessing. He is seriously, he is such a phenomenal human being. He really is. He does not only like, I mean, he has his own successes, but he shares his successes. And he is somebody, if he believes in you and he knows like you are legit and you are that, he will go to bat for you. I met him in Pennsylvania, in Washington, PA, during it was our paranormal team was there real quick. And that was the night that Tracy Ray and I both got the same stuff. We both wrote it down. We were apart for an hour and a half. And it's very rare for two mediums to come together and get the same information in the same exact location on the same exact floor. And that was the day he said, "You need to be out there helping people." He goes, "You are legit." He goes, "And you have impressed me beyond like I'm not even going to say, but anyways, he used some other words. But anyways, ever since then, he is just like he's always been like that person like, "Hey, I have something. I want you to like try to, are you interested in doing something like this?" And so he was kind of the one who said, "Hey, I got this thing with kind of like Netflix." So he goes, "If you were interested." I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, sure, I'll try it out." Because I don't get too excited until the contract's in front of me. Because I've done a lot of, there's been different things I've done for different types of shows and different networks that I've done. But until like that's in front of you and you sign that dotted line, that's when you know like the thing is like legit. And then when the producers call you, then you really know that it's happening.
That's awesome.
So it was scary. Real quick, it was scary. We were locked in a house. I never met Shane or Ray prior to, well, I knew of Shane, but I've never met him or anything like that. And we ended up having to spend 28 days in this house, no phone, no internet, no talking to your loved ones. You were like the ghost in the house. Like that's how it felt. So, and we literally investigated 7 days a week for 28 days, every day. That was on top of it being an extremely haunted location. On top of, I already had picked up on the main man who had built that house. The funny thing is, like the producers were all hush hush. They didn't want to tell us anything about anything. We were sitting at the hotel the day that we were going to start filming, and I was like, they were kind of just kind of going over like what the plan was for the first day. I'm like, "Well, I want to tell you guys something." I'm like, "You don't have to tell me, but just kind of like give me an idea if like I'm onto something." So I'm already seeing the house that we're going to. I'm like, which I don't think is very far from here because they drove us around an hour and a half, like, well, or it seemed like an hour and a half prior to like trying to like make us like not know where we are. And that was like when you guys initially first saw like the, I don't know if you guys saw it, but if you like at the beginning we take off all our masks and we're like, "Ooh," because we were seeing it. But I had already told them about the house, what it looked like, the two patches of grass on each side, how I kept being taken around to the back. There was significance to the back. When I went back to the back, I was standing over top of that really creepy basement thing that we were in, but we hadn't been down there yet. I said, "I feel like we're standing on a passageway." I said, "You know how old homes have like old like, back in the railroad days, and they were like trying to like, sneak people in and out." I was like, "I feel like we're standing on one of those," and we were. I kept getting drawn to the Valentine room because that's what they made my room, of course. We would investigate and then everybody be done. They're like, "All right, see ya. Good night, Amy." I'm like, "You literally just stirred up a bunch of stuff here." I'm like, and then you're expecting me to go to sleep and you can't figure out why I'm not sleeping until 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. It was the most haunted room ever. It was insane, but we made it through. Luckily, I know that there was a lot of stuff that was not shown. It was kind of geared more towards like the drama um, at each location, I guess you would say. I was really excited. I really thought more of the evidence was going to get in because there was so much, so much. I can't even tell you. It would take like multiple, like us to sit here and talk about it, like to tell you how much we had. But
Wow.
it was
Wow.
a lot of fun. Would I do it again? Most certainly, because I'd be a lot more prepared this time and energetic wise. Every day for 2 weeks, I woke up, I felt like I was hungover. I was
Yeah, I
literally
bet.
being bombarded by so much energy that was there on so many different timelines that I just could barely function. And it was really hard. And
Wow.
imagine investigating 7 days a week for a month. That's rough.
That's
That is
I
rough,
do.
especially
we're
for
wore out. Yeah.
sensitives. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
We're wore out after one night.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're
So,
Yes.
driving. If we go to Indiana or whatever, we're driving home, and we've all been chatty Cathy all the way up there and singing songs and who let the dogs? And then on the way back, we're just like,
You're just like,
did I just miss my turn?
yeah.
Right?
Uh,
so
I
I
can't
would
before you
imagine a
totally
do
do
month.
like
us,
a week though.
sorry, Ash, what'd you say?
I said I would totally do a cut like 2 weeks.
Oh, I would love to do
Heck
28
yeah.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to do 20, the whole thing, just
Yeah.
because nobody ever gets that experience.
We were the
And so,
Right.
first people to do that. Yeah,
yeah,
that's never been
So
televised,
awesome.
I should say, televised.
Right.
So
yeah,
yeah, that was insane. I wish
it's
we
an
could do it
amazing,
again, but yeah.
it's an amazing experiment to do with the paranormal. Now, before
Hmm.
we let you go, could you tell us a certain point in the show that bothered you probably the most as a sensitive?
There's a few. Well, aside from being put on the spot by the guys and being really mad,
Yeah,
Yes.
um, there was there was a couple trippy times, like with that candle that they showed moving. That had been doing that for probably a good 35-40 minutes straight. Like it
Yeah.
just back, like never changed pace, never did anything. But there was a time, I guess when we did the Gonsfeld experiment, that was something. I'd never done that before. So, and that's where you put like the big ping pong balls on your eyes and you look into the red light. When I literally watched a shadow figure bend over, it'd be like I'm looking straight ahead and here's a shadow figure and it looks down at me like, "Can you see me? Like I see you."
Wow.
I was like
That's
I was like, "Oh, holy cow. Holy cow." I don't know if that really bothered me. That really like about made me fly out of my chair because it literally, I don't know if it was being like quote a smartass and saying, "How you doing?" Like I'm in your face kind of thing. Like, "Boo, do I see you?" Or like I don't know what you
that's
were doing, but you
awesome.
look creepy doing it. I'm like, and don't do that again. But and then there was other thing, the homeowner, um wonderful people. They were very nice, but I kept picking up on like one of them. Like I feel like there was some kind of something was conjured up there, and I know that it was like because I felt it. Like I'm like, and when I say it's not human, that doesn't mean it's like demonic. That just means it could have came from like elementals. It could have came from different parts of something, but I know that it was not human, and that really kind of bothered me because they blocked off areas of the home that I'm like, no, if you want me to be a part of this and you want authentic all of me, then you're not going to block me off anywhere. And I apologize, to Joel and them for going in your room, but when I read the diaries and I'm seeing the crystal balls and I wasn't getting, and yeah, no, I was getting a little bit of bad vibes there. So I kind of felt like, in a way, on top of everything that was already there from the past, like I felt like something was being conjured up there too, and I wasn't really happy about that. So, but then I'll show that on the show, so nobody would know that.
of
Well, thank you
course.
for that.
They don't
Of course.
share stuff like that on the show.
No.
Well, it's been an hour. I know you've got things to get to. I want to thank you again for coming on with us. It has
Hmm.
been an amazing chat with you. We had a really good
It's
chat at Scarefest, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us again tonight.
Well, thank you. So
well,
I'm a talker, so I'll be like,
Yeah.
well, this
Well,
hour has passed by like nothing. Nothing
right?
yeah,
flashy.
it was like talking to a best friend, honestly.
Yep.
And you gave us such good information to
Hmm.
like educate us and to whoever watches this video. So I
Good.
really do appreciate that.
That's the whole goal of doing these things, because you want to help people out there. You want to help them grow and learn. And so if that's what we can do, then hey, we can do it.
Let's
But
do
you
it.
can see, you said it's like talking to best friends. That's how you know other people have, you share that vibe, like you share those abilities. That's the feeling that I was trying to explain earlier. Just wanted to say
Right.
that real quick.
That's awesome.
I
That's
literally call these my sisters
Mm-hmm.
because we are so connected. It's ridiculous. And I felt like we kind of had an instant connection at Scarefest. Like
Yep.
Yep.
your energy is so great and so good to be around. So I
And
feel
very,
comfortable talking to you.
yeah, I'm very thankful that you gave us the time that you did, because we were at your booth for a good bit of time.
Well, good. Well, thank you for
Yeah.
having me on. So, well,
Thank
you
you
guys
so
can
much.
message me anytime. So,
Thank
And
you.
thank you so
talk.
much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Bye
Have a
bye.
great
Bye.
night. Bye bye.